Alright, how are we doing? I'm John from BD. And finally, today, we're sandblasting the Celica. Well, here we are, finally, completely stripped. Every single nut and bolts, every opening has been duct taped up 2 or 3 layers to stop any sand going in the car. We've got the special blasting cover over protecting. There's a bit of wiring harness there, or it's an elephant's cock, one or the other, it's up to you. All taped up to the seams, all ready for blasting. It's been an absolute monumental task, but I'm there. Obviously any bits that aren't getting blasted and we couldn't pull over there, we've duct taped to protect it. We're ready to rock and roll. All the brackets, these are all the brackets for blasting as well. I did start off labelling them all, but that soon went out the window. But they're only nuts and bolts and brackets, we'll figure out where they go. So, this is the last time the engine bay will be in its 28, 30-year-old paint. Let's rock and roll. So we're just getting our way into it, and as you can see, it doesn't remove any of the sealer blasting. But it's looking very clean and very good. Brilliant. So Martin's on his brake. We are obviously, as you can see, we're outside. Yeah, this is where we do our blasting. We've devised a little blast area because we don't do a lot of it, to be honest. And the reason we don't do a lot of it is because it's a dirty, horrible job. And I'll show you some of the stuff we use. It's not actually sand that we use. It's this black blasting media. Yeah, I'll find out from Martin what's in it. But it's a lot better. It's great at removing, as you can see. Now, like we've discussed, there's loads of places where I haven't took the original underseal off because there was no need. And also, I've had a bit of an accident, I've had a bit of an accident, getting old now, 45 nearly, and I've given myself a hernia. So, to be climbing in and out the car and grinding and doing all this, I'm finding things a bit of a struggle at the moment. So that's my excuse anyway. So some of the underseal hasn't been removed, some in the engine bay as well, but it's absolutely solid. It's not going anywhere, and everything's going to be resealed on top of it. But we're going back to the car, as you can see. You know, there's some little bits where I'll take it off afterwards, but this main bit here is absolutely solid. And obviously where we've put the new sills on and welded into the floor, you can see here, this is what happens when you don't have a ramp. I thought I sealed everything up properly and there's bits I've missed. So we'll redo all that area, and you can see now the corrosion here on these back pieces, which isn't bad, is it? Look, you can see solid metal, so it's just that section that needs doing. And yeah, I'm really happy. Should we have a look at the engine bay? Let's go and have a look at the engine bay. Up here, you can see where I haven't removed the sealant on that main weld line or whatever, but you know, is there any need to? How far do I go? Yeah, I'm really happy. It's all coming up really nice. There'll be some bits where, you know, it looks like Stevie Wonder's brushes on at the factory. Bloody awful. But yeah, it's all coming on and it's all looking great. I'm really happy. So I'm going to leave Martin to do his work, and then I will we'll have a proper look at it when it's all finished and it's back in the shop. But basically, as soon as it goes back in the shop, it's getting epoxy primer straight on it to protect it immediately. Let's roll. So as you can probably hear in the background, Martin's blowing the car off. It's all sandblasted now, he's just giving it a good clean up. Obviously we picked the hottest day of the year to do it in, just like when I cleared out my storage unit. I'm made up with how solid the car is. We'll get it in the workshop and we'll have a look at it. I'm excited, look at this. Right, here we are in the booth. The car's fully masked up. So is the rotisserie spit. Don't ask me to wrap a rotisserie spit for you for Christmas because state of it. But anyway, we'll have a quick walk around the car and let's see where we're at. All right? Okay, so we're getting ready for epoxy. What I'm going to do is, what I've decided to do is, I've decided to do the engine bay and under the front arches today. And then once that's dry tomorrow, we'll turn the spits 90 degrees and we'll do all the underneath. Everything's masked off. I've tidied up a lot of the factory seam sealer because I'm going to redo it afterwards because some of it was terrible. And obviously we're going to struggle to get paint all the way into the side of the scuttle. So I'll have to figure out a way of doing that later. And we're ready to rock and roll. Now before we do, there's a few things you've got to be careful of when you're doing a job like this, and we'll do it this way and I'll show you. Right then, we're nearly ready, but one thing before we do get started is safety first. Yeah, so normally you should be wearing an air-fed system, air-fed respirator for this. I'm going to struggle a little bit climbing in and out, not only because obviously I've got a hernia, but also when you've got all the air-fed system and all that, it will be easy to get snagged. So I'm going to turn the booth up to maximum. I've got the engine bay as close to the exit fans as possible. I'm just going to have to wear a brand new charcoal respirator mask. The other one as well is, obviously the car is on the spit and it is solid. And it is raised, so it's easier for me to paint, but it's very easy to get a bit excited and start rushing. And with a job like this, there's so many sharp corners, edges. It's easy to knock yourself out. It's easy to crack your head, cut yourself. And because I'm here and it's a Sunday and I'm working on my own, always keep that in mind and take your time. There's no point rushing anything. So take your time, don't rush, be safe, and let's go. With any of our classic car jobs, the epoxy primer we're using, that's the same as we did on the sills. We're using the Novol for Classic Cars epoxy. It's one of the highest quality epoxies you can get. And with along that comes the matching epoxy hardener, which you mix 3 to 1, 3 parts epoxy to 1 part hardener. And then use a special epoxy thinner to thin it down. I'm not going to be putting it on too thick in the engine bay, so I'm probably going to use today, I'm probably going to use my Iwata Kaiwami, my new gun. It's only a 1.3. It does suggest that this is sprayed with a 1.7, but that's fine but it's very high build, so I'm not going quite so high build, so I'm going to be thinning it down. So this 1.3 should be fine. Let's get it mixed up. Right, Novol epoxy, very high solids it is, it's very thick. As you can see in here, it's really thick, you know what I mean? And then, you get the epoxy, which is also the hardener, and this is why you pay for quality. Check this out. Look how thick that is. So it's basically like an epoxy resin system really. It's just going to dry really hard. It's going to adhere to the surface excellently, and the corrosion protection is second to none. So no matter what paint job you're doing, it is only as strong as its weakest point. And this is the main adhesion to the metalwork, and everything else adds onto this. This is basically the foundation of your paint job. Don't cut any corners, always use the best quality products you can. I'm going to get this mixed up, I'm going to thin it down, and we'll get it in the gun and do some shooting. Right, here we go, epoxy time. Novol Classic Car epoxy, Iwata Kaiwami 4, spraying
quite low pressure, about 20 psi. Gonna get all the intricate areas done first, and then I can go on with heavier coats afterwards. Probably looking for the intricate bits done and then 2 decent medium wet coats for protection. Let's roll. I love painting engine bays, said no one ever. And only an idiot will talk about health and safety and then smash his head on the bar. That bar. God. Anyway, let's have a look at it. Okay, here we go. We have done a couple of thick coats of epoxy. And I did thin it down a bit too much at the beginning. So what I did is I finished off with that coat, just because it levels off nice. And the good thing about this Novol Classic Car epoxy is it does dry with a gloss finish, so it does show any imperfections, and it can be sanded if needs be. So if you're doing a full body that's bare metal, you can epoxy it, and then maybe 3 or 4 days later you can block it to show any low spots or high spots or whatever if need be. And this is designed also to have filler put on top of it. A lot of epoxies aren't. So yeah, here we go. Really happy, it's looking good. Look at the factory seam sealer. But I wasn't going to look at that. That's from Toyota, that. On all in there. But anyway, there we go. Look at that, bastard. Good job it's only primer. Now on top of this is all going to be stone chipped as well, and then painted. Any bare areas like under here that have been welded, I haven't done the underbody yet obviously, they're going to be spray seamed as well. But no, it's looking good. I'm really happy with it. It's a good day because again it's progress. To see everything one uniform colour, it just makes me happy. Just makes me happy. There we go. Take a look. Let's take a look. It looks really nice in this cream primer, especially because it's high gloss as well. There are places I haven't been able to get in with the gun, inside the scuttle there, so I am literally going to have to get in there with a brush to protect it. Sometimes it's just what you've got to do. It's very difficult to get into a lot of places, impossible in some places, but that's why you have cavity wax afterwards. While we were here, I had some epoxy left in, so I epoxied a few bits, a few brackets for like exhaust brackets, front suspension bits and bobs. Now they're ready for epoxy black or epoxy grey, depending. Really happy. You can see now the bracket that needs welded. Now it may be a week or two until that gets welded, so I just sprayed over it. It can always be ground off. So you can see how bad those cracks are. So yeah, but inside, I am aching from painting inside. But you can see every bit.
is all done. Just looks nice, doesn't it? Oh, I love the look of fresh paint. Right, okay, ow, oh, getting old.
So there we go, guys. The engine bay is in epoxy primer, and I must say, I'm liking this gun. It's an Estiwasa Kaiwami, which is the equivalent to a W400. I'm really happy, it's looking good. Tomorrow we're going to flip it on its side, we're going to do all the underbody. Day 2. Here we go, underbody. Right, so obviously it's been sandblasted, and then I've gone over it in a wire wheel again because there was some pitting there, and in that pitting corrosion had already started. Great. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this procedure a little bit differently than we did the engine bay, because none of this is on show and there are a lot of seams where panels are attached and welded. So we're going to use the Novol Classic Car epoxy again, but what we're going to do for the first time around is we're actually going to brush it on. We're going to brush it into all those seams, all the seams everywhere, just to try and get as much penetration as we can, just to protect against corrosion. And then the second coat is going to be sprayed on, because it doesn't matter if we have the odd brush mark or whatever, because there's going to be so many different layers put on top of that. Then we're going to wait a few days, and then we're going to use the Novol STP seam sealer, which is, you can put it on with a cork gun or you can actually spray it, and that's what's going to replicate the original factory finish under the arches. I've even got beige because that's what colour the original seam sealer was. And then on top of that, we're going to use a stone chip, probably Novol Gravix. A lot of people use Raptor. I'm not keen on that because it's not really designed to go under body, it's designed as a bed liner. And cars move and they twist, and I've heard about it cracking on seams. So we're going to just use a rubberized 1K stone chip protector paint, which gives a really thick rubberized build. And then on top of that, we're going to go an acrylic 2-pack, body coloured, so it's going to be high gloss. And then after that, obviously, when everything's built up, it'll be cavity waxed and probably spray with Lanagard. Right, here we go. Right then, there we go. I have absolutely blathered the epoxy on. It's impossible to get into some places. You just can't even get in there with a brush, so I'm going to have to try and find a way to fire it in. Yeah, it's blathered on. I didn't have any thinner for the epoxy. You can't just use normal paint thinners. So it's really thick, so I had to use my Sasa 2.5 to blather it on. So in a few places I do have a couple of little runs. Boo. But it's all going to be seam sealed, spray seam sealed anyway. So it's going to look like that when it's finished. So it makes absolutely no difference. And sometimes you've got to get it running into joints. See, places like that, it's hard to get in. So I fired it in with a gun. I know as I was brushing it all on, what I did was, you probably see at the beginning of the video, I set the paint gun to a very fine jet, very low pressure, and basically went round every joint and then just went round the brush. So we are in epoxy, and I need to leave that for a few days now to fully cure, and then we'll be no, we won't be doing anything, because yeah, you might be wondering why there's tape on here. Tape there, and tape here is because these are the bits that need a bit of welding. But it may be a week or two so I can get it welded, so it was more important to go into epoxy. So there we go, we're in epoxy. I feel like we're making progress. It's been a busy weekend, but we've got there. So take it easy, guys. I'll see you next time.